Can you actually get angry in another language? Most people can't. Even when you're fluent, you can joke in it, you can even argue in it. But the moment you're actually angry, you switch back to your native language. Foreign swear words just don't scratch the same itch. At the same time, you could listen to extremely vulgar lyrics in another language and feel nothing, but the same words in your own language can feel a bit shocking. Which begs the question, if you understand the meaning perfectly, why doesn't it carry the same emotional weight? Well, there's an explanation, something bilinguals have always felt but never fully understood. And this time, I didn't even try to email any professors. I already know they don't answer and they don't like me. Instead, I'm pulling an all-nighter to help you get the answers. And I found 4 factors behind this. We're gonna talk about them in this video. Nie zaboravite da lajkujete ovaj video i pretplatite se na moj kanal. Ajde. Now, this isn't something just a few people complain about online. It's actually a recurrent finding in bilingualism research. One well-known study surveyed multilingual speakers about how strong swear words, taboo phrases, and emotionally charged expressions feel in each of their languages. And the result was clear. Native language expressions were consistently rated as more powerful and shocking. Therefore, we can establish that this is a real studied pattern. Alright, so the first factor is your brain just never learned to care about those words. This one is simple, and you're gonna notice it right away. Think back with me. How did you first learn your nastiest curse words in your native language? You most likely learned them in charged moments. A parent screaming, your dad watching football, maybe adults fighting, maybe a classmate taught them to you. And then what happens when your teacher or parents hear you saying those words? You get punished, you get yelled at. They tell you to never say them again. So from an early age, your brain attaches a strong emotion to those words and classifies them as something forbidden and extremely bad. By contrast, most of the profanity you learned in your second languages came as detached items through memes, rap music, YouTube videos, movie subtitles, Netflix TV shows. You learned the translation, but you didn't absorb the shove to the chest that made the native word an emotional weapon. And what I just described to you isn't just speculation, it's backed by research. Linguist Anita Pavlenko has written extensively about what she calls
language embodiment,
the idea that words become emotionally powerful when they're learned in high emotion contexts. In her analysis of multilingual speakers, she shows that words learned through lived experience tend to carry stronger emotional weight than words learned later in neutral settings. That's because comprehension and emotional impact are not the same system. Your brain can fully understand an insult in another language and still not feel the same physiological and emotional response it would in your native language. In simple words, the environment in which you acquire a word shapes how deeply it's felt. The second factor is emotional distance changes how you behave because of factor number 1 and the fact that swear words in your second language were never tied to intense experiences and don't trigger the same internal alarms. Something subtle but powerful happens. The emotional intensity in a foreign language is slightly reduced, and there's a very interesting experiment that tested this directly. This psychologist and his colleagues presented bilingual participants with moral dilemmas, such as variations of the classic trolley problem in either their native language or a foreign one. The scenarios were identical. The only variable was the language. And guess what? When participants reasoned in a foreign language, they were significantly more likely to make utilitarian choices. The researchers concluded that emotional reactions were just weaker in a second language, which led the participants to base their choices more on reasoning than gut feelings. And this emotional distance, by the way, can be used as a tool in therapy. A lot of therapists note that people discussing trauma in a second language sometimes feel less overwhelmed. They report feeling less shame, less inhibition, and more freedom to say whatever they want, including taboo things. And that's one of the reasons reasons why you can comfortably sing a filthy song in another language without flinching, but identical lines in your native language make you go, whoa, did he actually say that in a song? Now, let's connect that to anger. Anger isn't just about transmitting information, it's about impact, release, feeling the force of your own words. If the emotional charge is reduced, the release feels weak, and that's why when you're truly furious, foreign swear words just don't scratch the same itch. You just have to switch back to that one language that delivers the full emotional impact, your native one, most of the time. Factor number 3 is thinking in a foreign language costs mental bandwidth. Because of factor number 1 and the distance it creates, there's another problem. Have you ever noticed that when you're angry and you're trying to speak another language, you kind of start stuttering, even when you're fluent? Why did you do the This is a form of cognitive load. Anger is not a slow, thoughtful thing. It's a quick physical reaction, a jolt in your chest, a snap in your voice, words that come out short and sharp. This whole sequence happens automatically in your native language. When you use a second language, you're not only saying the words, you're juggling grammar, searching for the words, monitoring pronunciation, and policing the mistakes. All that housekeeping takes attention and effort, and this breaks the automatic chain anger needs. Imagine sprinting while trying to solve a math problem. It's kind of impossible, right? Emotion demands immersion. It needs you to be fully present. Otherwise, the body can't fully switch into that raw, impulsive gear that anger needs. That's why when you're angry and struggling to find the right phrase, your brain reaches for the native option because it's simply the path with the least resistance. And the less fluent you are, the more this shows up. Early bilinguals and people who are proficient feel it kind of less. So yes, thinking in a foreign language kind of steals the mental fuel that anger needs. And that's a big reason why it's hard to get angry in another language. The fourth factor is mass desensitization. So far, we've looked at what's happening inside your brain. Now we're going to look at what's happening around you. If your second language is English or any widely consumed language, you're most likely constantly exposed to its profanity, usually not in serious situations, but entertainment. And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that most of us are extremely overexposed to English profanity to the point that we got desensitized to it. If you hear a strong word once in a while, you notice it. But when you keep hearing it over and over and over again millions of times, it barely registers anymore. There's a very simple mechanism here. Repetition reduces impact. And this is why so many people say the same thing. Oh, English swear words are so weak. They're unsatisfying. They're not powerful. Curses from X language are much better, and so on and so forth. Well, it's kind of because English swear words have been stripped of their intensity by constant exposure. Meanwhile, your native language usually doesn't go through the same process. So you're left with two completely different systems. You got a language where swear words are tied to real consequences, and another like English, where they've been turned into background noise. When you try to use the latter in a real moment of anger, it just doesn't land. So when you put all of this together, you start to see the pattern. It's not about vocabulary, it's about context. The same word can feel completely different depending on where you learned it and how you learned it. Different memories, different exposure, different emotional wiring. But this topic is complex. It's not black and white. The 4 factors that we mentioned, for example, are reasonable, but they're still not universal. It still depends on the culture you grew up in. In certain cultures, swearing is just a part of casual everyday speech. It's almost neutral, but in others it's heavily restricted and tied to things like religion, social boundaries, respect, hierarchy, and so on. Same goes for households. Also, if you grew up speaking 2 languages, or if you lived deeply in another culture, or if you experienced real emotional moments in that foreign language, then maybe it can carry the same emotional weight. It depends. But the key idea in this whole video is that words don't carry power on their own. They borrow it from the life you lived with them. And that's why when you're actually angry, you don't reach for the language that you speak well. You reach for the one that you feel well. Now, I want your opinion about all of this in the comments. Maybe an additional study, a correction, a fact, a story. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube might actually never show you my channel again once you click off. So make sure you hit this button to never miss out. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Take care. Love you.